She had always admired her father, a man who had built a successful company from nothing. From a young age, she had spent countless hours watching him handle difficult situations with grace, intelligence, and fairness. He was tough but fair, demanding the best from everyone around him. She wanted to follow in his footsteps, but she also wanted to understand something he often mentioned but never explained fully: the true character of the people who worked for him. Lately, she had heard things. Whispers and small complaints from employees about coworkers cutting corners, being rude, or taking advantage of the system. Nothing had reached her father directly, but she knew enough to worry. A company could only succeed if the people inside it were honest, hardworking, and respectful. She wondered if the employees lived up to that. She knew she could ask her father to investigate, but she wanted to see it herself, in a way that no one could hide from. Late one night, she sat in her small apartment thinking. She made notes, wrote down names she had heard about, incidents she remembered, and even small observations from her visits to the office. She realized that if she wanted the truth, she couldn't just talk to her father or the managers. She had to see it firsthand, and that meant going undercover. The idea was both thrilling and scary. She was young, and she had never worked in a low-level position before. She had always been in offices, attending meetings, learning from her father, but the thought of stepping into a completely different role, one where she would be invisible to everyone and judged by her actions, fascinated her. It was an opportunity to test her own abilities too, to see if she could adapt, learn quickly, and make a difference without anyone knowing who she really was. The next morning, she visited a local uniform store. She picked out a simple cleaning outfit. Nothing flashy, just plain and practical. She bought gloves, a small apron, and even a cleaning bucket. She looked at herself in the mirror and hardly recognized the person staring back. Gone was the polished look of a CEO's daughter. Instead, she looked like anyone who might be working quietly in the background, unnoticed and underestimated. She returned home and started planning her schedule. She had to make sure her presence in the office as a cleaner would not be questioned. She decided to avoid her usual friends at work and any familiar faces. She would arrive early, work quietly, observe carefully, and leave unnoticed. She made a mental note to write down everything she saw, every interaction, and every small detail. She wanted to create a clear picture, without bias, of what was really happening inside her father's company. When she arrived at the office the next day, she felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. The security guard nodded at her as she entered, thinking she was a new cleaning staff member. She greeted him politely and moved on, her heart pounding. The office looked the same, but her perspective had changed. She noticed the small things, the way employees left trash on their desks, how some ignored simple office rules, and the casual way people spoke to each other. She could see the undercurrents that were invisible when she walked through as herself. She started her work quietly, sweeping floors, emptying trash bins, and cleaning surfaces. She listened as people talked, sometimes casually, sometimes complaining about their coworkers. She began to notice patterns. Certain employees seemed genuinely dedicated, staying focused and helping others when needed. Others talked too much, avoided tasks, and seemed to care more about appearances than actual work. It was subtle, but she could see the difference. During lunch, she watched from a corner, pretending to wipe tables. She noticed how some employees would take extra food or ignore rules about sharing supplies. Some of them would be kind and helpful to those around them, while others were quick to gossip or criticize. She realized that these behaviors, small as they seemed, could affect the entire workplace. The culture of a company was built not just by its leaders, but by every person contributing or failing to contribute, every day. By the end of her first week, she had already started keeping a small notebook hidden in her apron. Every incident, every interaction was recorded. She wrote about the employees who were diligent, and she wrote about those who seemed careless or dishonest. She began to understand the challenges her father faced, and she admired his patience even more. Running a company was not just about profits and decisions. It was about people, their choices, and the consequences of those choices. She also had moments of self-reflection. Working in a position that was physically demanding and largely invisible made her realize how easy it was for hard-working people to be overlooked. She understood the frustration of being unnoticed, and it gave her a new appreciation for the support staff who kept the company running behind the scenes. She found herself smiling at small acts of kindness, a coworker helping another carry supplies, someone offering a drink, or quietly assisting without seeking attention. Those moments made her heart lift, showing her that not everyone was as careless or self-serving as rumors suggested. As the days went by, she became more confident in her role. She learned how to move around the office without drawing attention, how to listen without being obvious, and how to interact with employees in a natural way. Some employees were kind to her, assuming she was new and eager to do her job well. Others were impatient or dismissive, expecting less from someone they assumed was inexperienced. She took note of everything, understanding that her observations were creating a picture of each person's true character. She started noticing the subtle ways some employees manipulated situations. A coworker might blame another for a mistake or quietly avoid tasks that were their responsibility. Another might exaggerate their achievements in meetings. She recorded each of these incidents carefully, knowing that she needed concrete examples, not just impressions. Her goal was to be fair, to see the truth, and to provide a clear report to her father so that decisions could be made based on facts, not gossip. By the end of the first month, she had seen enough to understand the company in a way she never had before. She knew which employees were genuinely committed and which were undermining the workplace. She had also learned a lot about herself, her patience, her ability to adapt, and her determination to pursue the truth no matter how uncomfortable it might be. She felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that her effort, though unseen by others, was important and meaningful. She realized that being undercover had given her more than just insights into employee behavior. It had taught her empathy, humility, and the value of observing before judging. She had walked in the shoes of people who were often overlooked, and it changed the way she thought about leadership and responsibility. Her father had always emphasized the importance of understanding people, but now she understood it on a personal level. As she prepared to write her report for her father, she felt a mixture of pride and apprehension. The truth was not always easy to face, and some of the findings would be difficult for employees to hear. But she also knew that honesty and accountability were crucial for the company's future. She was ready to present the facts, knowing that the next steps would shape not only the workplace, but also the culture and values her father had worked so hard to build. She left the office that day feeling a sense of accomplishment. The experience had been challenging, eye-opening, and deeply rewarding. She knew there was still more to discover, but she had taken the first step in understanding the true nature of the people around her. And as she walked home, she couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement for what was to come, because she knew that her work was only just beginning, and the lessons she had learned would guide her every decision in the days ahead. She had now settled into her routine at the office, moving quietly through hallways, cleaning rooms, and observing without drawing attention. Each day revealed more about the people who worked there. At first, she had only noticed small things: papers left on desks, chairs pushed back carelessly, or employees chatting too long. But soon patterns began to emerge, and she realized that some behaviors were part of a bigger picture. There were employees who seemed genuinely committed. They worked through breaks, helped their coworkers, and took pride in doing even the smallest tasks well. They treated everyone with respect, regardless of position, and often went out of their way to support the team. Watching them reminded her of the lessons her father had taught her about integrity and diligence. She made sure to note their names, their behaviors, and the quiet ways they contributed to the company's success. They deserved recognition even if they would never know she had been watching. Then there were others who disappointed her. At first it was small things: someone taking extra supplies for themselves, another talking while pretending to work. But the more she watched, the more she realized that some employees had developed a sense of entitlement. They skipped tasks, blamed others for mistakes, and sometimes acted in ways that undermined their colleagues. She noticed a few incidents where employees avoided responsibilities entirely, leaving work for others to complete. It angered her silently, but she knew she had to remain objective. Her goal was to see the truth, not let her emotions cloud her judgment. She started to understand the unspoken hierarchies among the employees. There were people who tried to be seen as important by influencing others, often spreading gossip or exaggerating achievements. They seemed to believe that appearances mattered more than actual work. She observed how some would take credit for things they hadn't done, or quietly avoid accountability when problems arose. It was frustrating to see how such behavior could affect the morale of the hardworking staff. She realized that this was the invisible challenge her father faced every day. As she moved through her tasks, she also began to notice interactions that revealed character. Some employees treated her kindly, assuming she was new and inexperienced. They offered advice, shared tools, and even included her in small conversations. She found these moments heartwarming, realizing that genuine kindness still existed in the workplace. It made her want to protect and reward such people, knowing that they were the backbone of the company. But there were others who treated her poorly, barely acknowledging her presence, speaking dismissively, or ignoring her entirely. They assumed she was beneath them, someone to overlook. She documented these interactions carefully, understanding that the way employees treated those they considered lesser often revealed their true nature. It was not just about doing the job, but about respect, empathy, and integrity. She had to adapt quickly. Working as a cleaner required a different kind of skill than what she was used to. She learned how to move efficiently, clean thoroughly, and anticipate the needs of the office without drawing attention. Sometimes she would overhear conversations that made her laugh or shake her head in disbelief. Other times she would feel a pang of frustration at how people avoided responsibility. Each experience added to her understanding, shaping a detailed picture of the company she had only seen from the outside before. One morning, she noticed a small incident that highlighted the contrast between employees. A senior staff member had left a report incomplete, expecting someone else to fix it. A junior employee quietly corrected the mistake without complaint. She observed the subtle tension in the room, the frustration of the junior employee, the carelessness of the senior, and the silent approval of others who had noticed. It was a small event, but it revealed a lot about accountability and character. She added every detail to her notebook, knowing that small actions often spoke louder than words. She also began to see how office politics affected behavior. Some employees avoided doing certain tasks or taking responsibility because they feared negative consequences or wanted to maintain a favorable image. Others manipulated situations to their advantage, sometimes at the expense of colleagues. She realized that leadership and company culture played a role, but individual choices mattered most. Observing these dynamics gave her insight into how to improve the workplace, not just report problems. During her break, she reflected on her own feelings. Being invisible in the office gave her a new perspective on humility and patience. She felt empathy for those who worked hard but were overlooked, and she felt frustration for those who wasted opportunities. She also realized that her own position in the company had shielded her from seeing these truths before. Now, she could experience them firsthand, gaining a deeper understanding of both the people and the company culture. As the days turned into weeks, she noticed changes in her perception. She could predict certain employees' behaviors, anticipate mistakes, and understand motivations. She began to develop a sense of which employees could be guided and improved, and which were unlikely to change. It was not an easy realization, but it was necessary. She understood that leadership required tough decisions and that protecting the company sometimes meant making difficult choices. There were moments of personal growth, too. She learned to manage her emotions, stay calm under pressure, and observe without judgment. She became more patient, understanding that true insight required time and attention. She also learned to communicate subtly, offering small assistance or encouragement when appropriate, without revealing her identity. These skills were invaluable, not just for her undercover mission, but for her future role in the company. One afternoon, she witnessed a confrontation between two employees. One had made a mistake, and instead of owning up to it, they blamed a coworker. The accused employee remained calm, tried to explain, but was interrupted and dismissed. She quietly documented everything, noting the reactions of others and the subtle power dynamics at play. She realized that these situations, though seemingly small, could affect morale and productivity in significant ways. It was a lesson in human behavior, communication, and accountability. She also began to understand the importance of recognition. Employees who felt valued and appreciated worked harder, supported each other, and contributed positively to the workplace. Those who were neglected or dismissed became disengaged, careless, or even resentful. Observing these patterns helped her see that leadership was not just about rules and performance, but also about fostering a culture of respect, encouragement, and fairness. As the undercover experience continued, she found herself reflecting on her own goals. She realized that observing others had taught her more about herself than she had expected. She had grown in empathy, patience, and understanding. She had learned to value hard work in all forms and to appreciate the small acts that often went unnoticed. She had also developed a keen eye for character, understanding the subtle differences between honesty, integrity, and manipulation. By the end of part 2, she had accumulated a wealth of observations. Her notebook was filled with examples of diligence, kindness, laziness, and deceit. She had begun to form a clear picture of the company and the employees, understanding who contributed positively and who undermined the workplace. She was ready to take the next step, knowing that the truth she had uncovered would soon lead to important decisions that could change the future of the company. And through it all, she had grown not just as a member of the company, but as a person, ready to face the challenges and responsibilities that lay ahead. By the third week of her undercover work, she had become almost invisible to the employees. They no longer noticed her presence unless she interacted with them directly. This allowed her to observe more naturally, catching small but revealing moments in the office that she had missed before. She noticed subtle behaviors, employees who avoided eye contact when taking shortcuts, others who offered help quietly, and some who tried to manipulate situations for their own benefit. She realized that understanding these behaviors required more than just watching. She had to listen carefully, pick up on tone and body language, and connect small incidents into patterns. She began to see the bigger picture of how different personalities influenced the workplace. Some employees were leaders in disguise, quietly guiding others and keeping projects on track. Others caused friction, intentionally or unintentionally, creating tension that went unnoticed by management. One morning, she noticed a senior employee taking credit for the work of a younger colleague. The younger employee, instead of confronting them, continued to work diligently, quietly correcting mistakes and completing tasks without recognition. She noted the courage and humility of the younger employee, realizing that these qualities were rare and valuable. She also documented the behavior of the senior employee, who seemed more concerned with appearances than actual contribution. During breaks, she observed employees forming groups, sometimes discussing work, sometimes gossiping. She noticed which employees dominated conversations, which ones stayed quiet, and which ones tried to influence others subtly. These social dynamics revealed a lot about the company culture. She realized that success in the office was not just about skill, but also about relationships and influence. Understanding these dynamics was crucial for identifying who truly deserved recognition and who needed guidance. She also began to see how stress and pressure affected behavior. Some employees became irritable or careless when faced with tight deadlines, while others thrived, showing resilience and problem-solving skills. She noted these reactions carefully, understanding that character was often revealed under pressure. This insight would help her father make better decisions about promotions, responsibilities, and team assignments. A particularly striking incident occurred when she witnessed an employee deliberately hiding a mistake in a report. The employee hoped no one would notice, but another employee caught it and corrected it quietly without confrontation. The first employee tried to shift blame later, but the observant colleague had already ensured the work was accurate. She documented every detail, noting not just the actions but also the motivations and consequences. She realized that accountability, honesty, and integrity were the true markers of professional character. She also started to notice how small gestures affected the workplace atmosphere. A simple act of kindness, like helping a colleague carry supplies or offering encouragement, had a ripple effect, boosting morale and cooperation. Conversely, dismissive or selfish behavior created tension and resentment. She understood that leadership involved fostering these positive behaviors while addressing negative ones before they escalated. Her own role as a cleaner allowed her to experience the office from a unique perspective. She saw the unnoticed effort that went into maintaining the workspace, The quiet support staff who kept everything running smoothly, and the small but significant ways employees contributed to the company's success. She gained a deep appreciation for these often overlooked individuals, realizing that a company's strength lay not just in its visible leaders, but in everyone who supported them. By the fourth week, she began to notice patterns that helped her differentiate between employees who were willing to improve and those who were unlikely to change. Some employees responded positively when given subtle guidance or encouragement, showing a desire to learn and grow. Others continued careless or dishonest behavior, despite opportunities to correct it. She carefully noted these differences, understanding that this information would be critical for her father when making decisions about staff retention and management strategies. One afternoon, she witnessed a conflict between two employees over responsibilities for a project. Instead of addressing the issue openly, one employee tried to shift blame to the other, creating tension and confusion. She watched quietly, noting how the conflict affected the surrounding team. It became clear that some employees avoided accountability, relying on manipulation and avoidance rather than problem-solving. Observing these situations gave her a clearer understanding of how leadership and accountability needed to be enforced to maintain efficiency and fairness. At the same time, she noticed positive role models within the office. Employees who demonstrated honesty, diligence, and cooperation inspired those around them. They offered help, shared knowledge, and maintained professionalism even in stressful situations. She appreciated their efforts and documented them carefully, knowing that recognizing these behaviors was as important as identifying negative ones. These employees represented the values her father had always emphasized and were key to maintaining a healthy workplace culture. As the undercover work continued, she also became more aware of her own growth. She had learned patience, observation, and empathy, developing skills that would serve her well in leadership roles. She had experienced the challenges faced by employees at all levels, gaining insight into human behavior, motivation, and ethics. She realized that understanding people required time, attention, and a willingness to see beyond appearances. She also began to understand the subtle influence of office politics. Employees who manipulated situations or sought favor for personal gain often created friction and undermined teamwork. By contrast, employees who acted with integrity and humility strengthened the team and fostered a positive environment. Recognizing these dynamics helped her see which employees contributed positively to the company's success and which needed guidance or correction. During her observation, she witnessed acts of generosity and mentorship. Experienced employees quietly assisted newcomers, sharing knowledge and offering advice without seeking recognition. These acts of kindness created a supportive culture and boosted morale. She made sure to document these interactions, knowing that they highlighted the importance of empathy and teamwork in a successful workplace. She also began to notice recurring issues that affected productivity. Small mistakes left unchecked, miscommunications, and avoidance of responsibility created inefficiencies. She understood that addressing these problems required a combination of accountability, training, and leadership. Observing these patterns firsthand gave her a clearer understanding of how to implement solutions effectively and fairly. By the end of Part 3, she had gathered a wealth of observations that painted a clear picture of the office dynamics. She had identified employees who exemplified integrity, diligence, and teamwork, as well as those who undermined the workplace through carelessness, dishonesty, or manipulation. She had also learned valuable lessons about empathy, patience, and leadership. Her undercover experience had not only revealed the true character of the employees, but also helped her grow as an individual, preparing her for the difficult decisions and actions that would follow in the next part of her journey. By the beginning of the fourth week, she had accumulated a detailed record of the office dynamics. Her notebook contained notes on employee behavior, small incidents, acts of kindness, moments of dishonesty, and patterns that revealed character. She had begun to see clearly which employees were loyal and hardworking, and which ones were careless or manipulative. She knew it was time to prepare for the next stage of her plan, the confrontation and the discussion with her father. One morning, as she swept the floor quietly, she overheard a conversation between two employees who were discussing a mistake in a report. Instead of owning up, one of them tried to shift the blame, creating unnecessary tension. She made careful notes about what was said, how it was said, and the reactions of those around. It struck her that accountability was a rare quality, and it was often revealed when people were under pressure. She realized that some employees were capable of improvement if guided, while others consistently avoided responsibility. Throughout the day, she observed both positive and negative behaviors. Employees who had been diligent continued their good work, quietly helping their colleagues and maintaining professionalism. Others continued to cut corners, gossip, or avoid tasks. She noticed that the negative behaviors often affected team morale and efficiency, while the positive behaviors inspired others and kept projects on track. She recorded all of this in detail, knowing that her observations would help her father make informed decisions. After several weeks, she felt ready to reveal her findings to her father. She knew it would be a difficult conversation, as some of the employees she had documented were long-term staff members, but she also knew that honesty and accountability were essential for the health of the company. She organized her notes, creating a clear and detailed report that highlighted patterns of behavior, incidents, and examples of both positive and negative contributions. When she met with her father, she explained her undercover experience from beginning to end. She described her observations, the behaviors she had witnessed, and the impact on the workplace. Her father listened carefully, impressed by the thoroughness and clarity of her report. He asked questions, seeking clarification on specific incidents and patterns. She answered honestly, providing examples and context for each observation. He could see the depth of her understanding and the careful attention she had given to her task. Her father was particularly interested in the employees who had consistently demonstrated diligence and integrity. He wanted to ensure that these individuals were recognized and rewarded, as they were crucial to the company's success. They discussed strategies for acknowledging their contributions and creating opportunities for growth and advancement. It was important to him that hardworking employees felt valued and appreciated. They also discussed the employees who had displayed careless or dishonest behavior. Her father knew that action had to be taken to maintain accountability and protect the company's culture. They talked about providing guidance and support where possible, giving employees a chance to improve. But for those who consistently failed to meet expectations or undermined the workplace, more decisive action was necessary. Her observations had provided the evidence needed to make these difficult decisions with fairness and clarity. As they reviewed the notes, they realized that some employees had hidden potential, but needed mentoring or training. Others, however, had shown patterns of behavior that were unlikely to change. Her father emphasized the importance of making decisions that were fair, consistent, and focused on the long-term health of the company. Her undercover experience had given him insights that he would not have gained through reports or meetings alone. They also discussed the emotional aspect of taking action. Firing employees was never easy, and it could affect morale if not handled carefully. They planned how to communicate decisions respectfully and thoughtfully, ensuring that those who were let go understood the reasons, and that the remaining staff felt supported and motivated. Her father appreciated her maturity and understanding of these delicate matters, recognizing that she had grown significantly through this experience. In the days following the meeting, she continued her undercover work for a short time to confirm a few final observations. She paid attention to how employees responded to subtle changes in guidance, noting improvements or persistent issues. This final review helped her and her father feel confident in the decisions they were about to make. They wanted to ensure that any action taken was based on thorough understanding and careful observation. She also reflected on the lessons she had learned personally. Working undercover had taught her patience, empathy, and the importance of observation before judgment. She had experienced firsthand the challenges faced by employees, the subtle ways behavior affected morale, and the impact of both positive and negative actions. She realized that leadership required a balance of fairness, vigilance, and compassion. Understanding people deeply was essential for making wise and ethical decisions. One afternoon, she observed a small act of kindness that reinforced these lessons. An employee noticed a colleague struggling with a task and quietly offered assistance without seeking recognition. The colleague accepted gratefully and the task was completed efficiently. This simple act had a ripple effect, improving morale and fostering cooperation among nearby employees. She noted the incident carefully, understanding that small gestures could have a powerful impact on workplace culture. At the same time, she witnessed a repeated pattern of negative behavior. An employee continued to avoid responsibilities, make excuses, and blame others. She documented each incident meticulously, knowing that a clear record was necessary to ensure fairness in any future action. Her observations confirmed that some individuals consistently undermined the workplace and needed to be addressed. By the end of the 4th week, she had completed her final review. She had documented examples of integrity, diligence, empathy, dishonesty, and carelessness. She had observed how individual actions influence team morale, productivity, and workplace culture. She had identified employees with potential for growth and those whose behavior was unlikely to change. She felt a sense of accomplishment, knowing that her careful observation had provided valuable insights for her father and the company. She prepared to conclude her undercover experience, reflecting on the personal growth she had achieved. She had learned to navigate challenging situations, observe human behavior without bias, and understand the subtle dynamics that influenced the workplace. She had gained empathy for employees, insight into leadership, and a clear understanding of the importance of accountability and recognition. Her father and she were now ready to take action. The next step would involve difficult conversations, decisions about employment, and strategies for improving workplace culture. Her observations had given them the tools to approach these challenges thoughtfully and fairly. She understood that the decisions would affect lives, but she also knew that honesty, integrity, and accountability were essential for the company's long-term success. As she cleaned the office for the last time in her undercover role, she felt a mix of relief and pride. The experience had been challenging, eye-opening, and deeply rewarding. She had learned more about people, leadership, and herself than she ever could have anticipated. She looked forward to the next steps, knowing that her efforts had provided a foundation for meaningful change in the company. The lessons she had learned would guide her in the future, helping her contribute to the company with wisdom, fairness, and empathy. The day finally arrived when the difficult decisions had to be made. She and her father had reviewed every note, every incident, and every observation from her undercover experience. They knew the importance of fairness and transparency, and they had prepared for each conversation with the employees. The goal was not just to discipline, but to improve the company culture and ensure that hardworking and honest employees felt valued. She began by meeting with employees who had consistently demonstrated diligence and integrity. She wanted to recognize their contributions personally, even though she had been undercover. She approached them quietly, expressing her appreciation for their efforts, patience, and professionalism. Their reactions were a mix of surprise and gratitude. Many had never received such direct recognition for their hard work. She explained that she had been observing the workplace carefully to understand the dynamics better, and that their commitment had not gone unnoticed. These moments of acknowledgement strengthened morale and reinforced the behaviors that helped the company succeed. Then came the more challenging conversations. She and her father met with employees whose behavior had consistently undermined the workplace. Some were careless, some had avoided responsibilities, and others had acted dishonestly. They presented the observations clearly and respectfully, providing examples without judgment or exaggeration. She had learned that it was important to communicate facts calmly and professionally, allowing employees to understand the reasons for the decisions. They emphasized that the goal was fairness, accountability, and improvement, not punishment for the sake of punishment. Some employees were defensive, struggling to accept responsibility for their actions. Others were surprisingly understanding, acknowledging their mistakes and expressing a desire to improve. She noticed that even in these difficult moments, the conversations could be constructive. She and her father offered guidance where possible, suggestions for improvement, and opportunities to learn. For those whose behavior showed little chance of change, the decision to let them go was made carefully and thoughtfully. Each conversation was conducted with respect, ensuring that employees felt heard, even if the outcome was not what they hoped for. After the meetings, she spent time reflecting on the outcomes. She felt a sense of relief that the decisions had been communicated with honesty and fairness. She had witnessed firsthand the impact of her observations and the careful planning that had gone into handling the situation. Some employees had left quietly, others with appreciation for the clarity, and a few with a sense of regret. She understood that this was part of the process, and that leadership often required making choices that affected people deeply, but were necessary for the greater good. The workplace began to change almost immediately. Employees who remained felt a renewed sense of responsibility and motivation. The atmosphere improved and collaboration became smoother. She observed how small adjustments in leadership and accountability could significantly affect morale and productivity. The positive changes reinforced her belief that careful observation, empathy, and decisive action were essential for successful management. She also continued to reflect on her own growth through the experience. Going undercover had taught her patience, observation, empathy, and the value of understanding people beyond appearances. She had learned to recognize character, integrity, and potential, and she had developed skills in communication, decision-making, and leadership. The experience had strengthened her confidence and prepared her to contribute more meaningfully to the company. She noticed that even small gestures and positive behaviors had a ripple effect throughout the office. Employees who had been quiet or overlooked began to take initiative, inspired by recognition and clear expectations. Cooperation improved and the sense of fairness motivated people to work harder. She realized that leadership was not just about rules and authority, but about guiding people, setting examples, and fostering a culture where integrity and diligence were rewarded. There were also moments of reflection on the challenges she had observed. She remembered the employees who had avoided responsibility, the subtle manipulations, and the lack of accountability that had initially concerned her. By addressing these issues carefully, she and her father had created a healthier, more transparent workplace. She understood that these lessons were valuable not only for the company, but also for her personal development as a leader. As days passed, she saw the long-term effects of the decisions made. Employees who had remained committed continued to excel, and those who had been let go were replaced by individuals who aligned with the company's values. The workplace culture shifted gradually, with increased respect, cooperation, and dedication. She observed these changes with satisfaction, knowing that the careful planning, observation, and communication had made a real difference. She also reflected on the importance of empathy and understanding in leadership. By observing employees closely and experiencing the workplace from a different perspective, she had gained insight into the challenges, motivations, and behaviors of those around her. She realized that leadership required more than authority. It required the ability to listen, understand, and act thoughtfully. Her undercover experience had provided this understanding in a way that no office meeting or report could. One afternoon, she noticed a junior employee quietly assisting a new hire with a complex task. She smiled, realizing that the culture of support and integrity was taking hold. Acts like these, once unnoticed, were now part of the everyday rhythm of the office. She knew that fostering such behaviors would continue to improve the workplace over time, creating an environment where employees felt valued and motivated. As the weeks passed, she also began mentoring some of the employees who had shown potential for growth. She offered guidance, shared her observations, and encouraged them to take initiative and develop their skills. She saw how her insights and support could help individuals improve, contributing to a stronger and more cohesive team. These mentoring moments reinforced the idea that leadership involved nurturing talent and guiding people toward their best selves. Reflecting on the entire undercover experience, she realized how much she had learned about people, leadership, and herself. She had developed empathy, patience, observation skills, and a deeper understanding of integrity, accountability, and workplace dynamics. She had experienced the challenges faced by employees, observed the impact of behavior on morale and productivity, and learned the importance of recognition and fair treatment. She knew that these lessons would shape her approach to leadership for years to come. Finally, she felt a sense of closure and accomplishment. Her undercover work had achieved its goal, revealing the true character of the employees, guiding her father in making informed decisions, and creating a healthier, more productive workplace. She had contributed meaningfully to the company, learned invaluable lessons about leadership, and grown as an individual. She looked forward to continuing her journey, confident that the experience had prepared her for the responsibilities and challenges that lay ahead. She walked through the office one last time as a cleaner, observing the quiet diligence, cooperation, and professionalism that now filled the space. It was a stark contrast to the tension and uncertainty of her early days undercover. She smiled, knowing that her efforts had helped shape a positive and fair workplace. The experience had been difficult, eye-opening and rewarding, teaching her lessons that would last a lifetime. Leadership, she realized, was not just about making decisions. It was about understanding people, guiding them with empathy and fostering a culture where honesty, integrity, and hard work were valued and celebrated.